The Memphis Grizzlies had a good game plan and they executed it rather well. The effort was there. They hung tough and even regained the lead after Golden State stormed out early, but it wasn't enough. The Warriors win, and now Memphis faces a do or die game on Friday at home in FedEx Forum. We'll talk about everything that transpired in the play-in game on Tuesday night on this episode of Locked On Grizzlies. Let's lock in.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to this Wednesday edition of Locked On Grizzlies. It is I, Joe Mullinax, your host for this episode. No DeMichael Cole. He's busy coming home from Golden State and finishing things up out there on the West Coast, getting ready, just like the rest of us will be, for a big Friday night contest for Memphis against either the Sacramento Kings or the Dallas Mavericks. That opponent will be determined tonight. Make sure that you are liking, commenting, rating, reviewing, subscribing wherever you get podcasts. We're proud members of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every single day. Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, Google, anywhere you get a podcast. Make sure you're checking out Locked On Grizzlies, and also make sure you are subscribing to our free daily newsletter, LockedOnDaily.com. We'll talk about that throughout the show. LockedOnDaily.com, free words on the Memphis Grizzlies from me, plus NBA analysis, fantasy basketball advice, and so much more. A tough loss for the Memphis Grizzlies. There's no way around it. And it continues the trend of Memphis not being able to win games against good teams, right? The Memphis Grizzlies have beaten up on teams with below 500 records all season long. They have struggled with teams that are better than that. The Golden State Warriors, of course, are better than that. But it is important to provide context here. The Golden State Warriors, since the Jimmy Butler trade, are one of the best teams in the NBA. Moses Moody, is something like 28-7 since he's moved into the starting lineup in the wake of the Jimmy Butler trade. That's a remarkable number. And Jimmy Butler's really freaking good at basketball. And Steph Curry is really freaking good at basketball. And the Golden State Warriors made a conscious choice to go get Jimmy Butler and bring him into the fold. Now, can't fault Zach Kleiman too much, because if you remember correctly, there were lots of rumors, and Kleiman said he didn't know where they came from, but how much can you believe Zach Kleiman on those sorts of things as a GM, or any NBA GM for that matter? If Jimmy Butler was on the radar of Memphis, it certainly looked like he should have been, because he was the difference maker, the X factor, as Charlie Walker said in our episode yesterday, of the crossover episode. Jimmy Butler was exactly that. Now, there was some help from the officials. That is important to point out. I rarely complain about the officials here on Locked On Grizzlies. I think it's a cop-out. But when two players between Jimmy Butler and Steph Curry shoot 31 free throws and the Memphis Grizzlies as a team only shoot 23, that's problematic. And you can't say, oh, well, it's because Memphis shot so many threes. The Grizzlies only took 26 threes in this game. The Warriors took 43 43 threes, excuse me. So 17 more three-point attempts for Golden State than the Grizzlies had, and Memphis took one more shot. So what's the point I'm trying to make? While there were some questionable calls on both sides, especially towards the end of the game, definitely a little more lopsided on the end of the Warriors. I think that is a fair point to make. But Draymond Green, an effective game, led the Warriors in plus minus, or was tied. He and Quentin Post, who hit 3 threes off the bench. The Golden State bench was better than the Memphis bench. The Memphis bench, of course, is decimated with the Jalen Wells and Brandon Clark injuries. Vince Williams Jr. not being himself, only 3 minutes played. Not the best outing for Vince. Lots of things added up to that loss, but even with that loss, it was a one-possession game late, and the Grizzlies simply could not execute. And this is from my co-host, DeMichael Cole there, the Commercial Appeal. Grizzlies coach Tuomas Isalo said Memphis was trying to get Desmond Bane the ball as the first option on that last play, where there was a 5-second violation. Santi Aldama was not able to get the ball in. Dez had a tremendous game. He did everything he could. Safe to say he's going to sleep well, or he slept well on Wednesday night would be my guess, Tuesday night into Wednesday morning. 30 points on 21 shots, 5 of 8 from 3. Played, again, 39 minutes, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, a really solid outing for Dez against the Warriors. He was the first option, wasn't there. Other options were taken away by the Warriors, and Santi wasn't able to get the ball in, and it was a 5-second violation. So the Grizzlies don't even get a chance to try to tie the game. That's frustrating. But Santi had one of his best games of the last month. 14 points on 8 shots, 8 rebounds, 2 assists, only 1 turnover. Not something that you would hope to say in terms of a loss. But Santi did show up and do some good things for these Grizzlies when they needed him to. John Conchar showed up and did some good things for these Grizzlies when they needed him to. And you know how I hate to admit that John Conchar did something well, but he most certainly did in this case. He performed at a high level when the Grizzlies needed him to perform, and he filled the void that was left behind by Vince Williams Jr. and to a lesser extent, Luke Kennard, who was a minus 13 in 17 minutes played, the worst plus minus of any Grizzlies player. So it was really just Santi off the bench. Memphis went with a pretty heavy starter rotation. And there was pros and cons to that. We'll talk more about Jaren Jackson Jr. and Zach Edey later on in the show, give them their own segments, so to speak, or own segments, so to speak. But the injury to John Morant will be the story to monitor heading into Friday's game. And we're not going to talk about Friday a ton just yet because we don't know who Memphis is playing yet. That game is literally tonight as the Kings host the Dallas Mavericks. The winner will move on to play Memphis on Friday. The losers' offseason begins. Who knows who's going to win that game? Logic would say the home team, Sacramento, has the advantage, but the Dallas Mavericks are a wild card. Who knows what team is going to show up for them? I am intrigued by that game, but I think it's more relevant for us to do a post-mortem of the Warriors game here on this episode of Locked On Grizzlies. And one of my biggest takeaways from the game, aside from Bane playing really well, was John Morant, who scored 22 points on 18 shots in 35 minutes, but he rolls his ankle. He's out of the game for several minutes. He plays with such grit, and he clearly was not himself after that ankle rolling. Again, that injury bears monitoring. Is he going to be able to play on Friday? I think that's a fair question sitting here talking today on this Wednesday edition of the show. He has 48 hours to heal up. We'll see where he's at. I am curious to see how that plays out for him and how he's able to bounce back from that ankle injury. But the fact he went back in, the fact that he competed and he fought, that is what you expect from a leader. That's what you expect from a star, a guy that is supposed to be one of the very best in your organization. John Morant did just that for the Grizzlies. Doesn't mean he was perfect. He had a terrible turnover late in the game that really hurt Memphis in a variety of ways. But he also was not alone in those decisions happening. We mentioned Santi Aldama a little while ago. It wasn't just Ja. And without Ja Morant scoring some of the shots that he scored, the Grizzlies aren't in the game really at all. So Memphis had an amazing third quarter run, 36-27 in the third. Memphis was down by 12 at the half, and it looked like it might be a blowout situation. But that's not how it happened. That's not how it happened. The Grizzlies won the second half by 7 points. It wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. The Warriors won the game, and they deserve the credit for that with some help from the officials. But it is important to acknowledge that Memphis did not lie down. Memphis did not quit. And if that Memphis Grizzlies team that played against the Golden State Warriors on Tuesday night and into early Wednesday morning, if that Grizzlies team shows up on Friday, I think they win. Now, is that the best thing for the organization? That's not the point I'm trying to argue. Because somebody's going to get in the comments, just like they do in my X mentions at Joe Mullinax, and they're going to talk about how the Memphis Grizzlies shouldn't be doing that. They should be trying to lose. They should be trying to miss the playoffs this year. What good does it do to play the Oklahoma City Thunder, who are just going to run through Memphis? They should prioritize the pick, focus on the offseason, just move off of this disastrous collapse of a regular season into the play-in now. They were at the 2 seed. Now they're fighting for their life for the 8. I'm not saying your opinion is wrong. I posted on X less than a week ago that the worst outcome is the 8 seed. But the most likely outcome is the 8 seed. If that Memphis Grizzlies team that competed and played their tails off against Golden State shows up on Friday night, they will beat whoever they play, Sacramento or Dallas. And if that does occur, you're looking at a series against the Thunder that's going to be extremely challenging. I don't think anybody's going to go into it with illusions of grandeur. But the players and the coaches are going to compete. And if anything, that is a testament to Tuomas Isolo and the game plan that was put in. It was successful. Aside from Curry and Butler, who were phenomenal, nobody else from the Warriors really killed them. Quentin Post, timely buckets. Gary Payton, timely buckets. But it was 11 and 12 points for those guys. Moses Moody only had 9 points. Podziemski had 3 points. We talked about him as an X factor on yesterday's show. He was almost a non-factor in 28 minutes of play. So there were things that were good that happened out in San Francisco. It just didn't add up to a win for the Grizzlies. It wasn't enough in this game. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, Zach Edey, on one hand, was one of the reasons Memphis was in the fight. On the other hand, he's one of the reasons they lost the contest. I'll try to make sense of those two things being true at the same time coming up next here on Locked On Grizzlies. This episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by OpenPhone. If you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. Think about it. When was the last time you had a service emergency? If the first person didn't answer, did you wait? Probably not. That's why you need OpenPhone. OpenPhone is the #1 business phone system designed to streamline and scale your customer communications all through an app on your phone or computer. I don't need to carry 2 phones when I use OpenPhone. With that app, I can manage business calls and texts from the app itself, whether I'm at my desk or I'm on the go. And my favorite feature is the shared inbox. Anybody on your team can jump into any conversation without missing a single beat. OpenPhone is offering our listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. That's OPENPHONE.com/LockedOnNBA. And if you're switching from another service, OpenPhone will even port your existing numbers over at no extra charge. OpenPhone, no missed calls, no missed customers. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is also brought to you by Amazon Fire TV. Did you know that your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn on any TV and make your gaming system and entertainment hub connect with the Fire TV Stick 4K devices. There's no console required. You just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign in to Game Pass Ultimate from Xbox with EA Play included. Then you're ready to go. You can dive into hundreds of premium titles like EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6, Avowed, as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. With 4K streaming, you can watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and more. And you can also play high-quality Xbox games at a fraction of the cost of a console. If you already have one, a Fire TV Stick 4K device is more affordable and easy to travel with, allowing you to take your or your kids' games with you wherever you plug in. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription, and compatible controller are required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K, 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max, 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. Go and check that out today. Sounds pretty cool. So Zach Edey was a lightning rod. He was polarizing on social media all through the game on Tuesday night, and he was kind of polarizing on the NBA broadcast itself because the Inside the NBA crew pointed out correctly how the Grizzlies were being picked on by the Warriors in the matchups with Zach Edey, who, regardless of who the guard was initiating offense for Golden State, they're trying to get onto switches with Zach Edey. But it's important to point out that part of the game plan for this game was Zach Edey defending Jimmy Butler. And this is, again, from DeMichael Cole at DeMichael C., my co-host here on Locked On Grizzlies, also Memphis Grizzlies beat writer for the Commercial Appeal. Grizzlies coach Tuomas Isolo said Memphis decided to cross-match Zach Edey on Jimmy Butler, in part because it wanted to keep Jaren Jackson Jr. out of foul trouble with Butler's ability to draw fouls. He also mentioned how Butler hadn't been an effective pull-up three-point shooter. So it was part of the game plan to do that. So Jimmy Butler going off the way he did was part of the game plan. I struggle with that, right? I struggle with that. Now, in fairness to Isolo, what is the better option? You know, Jaren has foul issues, right? He had 4 fouls across 39 minutes in this game. We'll talk more about Jaren later on in the show. What is your other choice? Are you going to put Joe Morant on him? Probably not. He's undersized and he's your offensive engine. Are you going to put Desmond Bane on him? Maybe. But you also need Bane to be that offensive engine when Morant's not involved. And again, Des played 39 minutes. Scottie Pippen Jr. had the task at times of trying to defend Steph Curry. Whoever's trying to defend Steph Curry, that's a really tough ask on most nights, especially now that Jalen Wells is out for likely the season due to his broken wrist. So I appreciate the creativity, but it didn't work. And the adjustment probably needed to be made sooner because they being the Golden State Warriors, were seeking out Edey in that way. And Jimmy Butler is good enough still at the game of basketball to take advantage of those opportunities. Where my frustration with Edey happens is more so on the offensive end. Because, Zach Edey is 7'4", 290 pounds. That's somebody you can target and drop coverage, all those sorts of things. All that is true. But Zach Edey is also a rebounding force, and that's one of the main reasons he continues to get playing time. 17 rebounds in 33 minutes. 17 rebounds. Nobody else in the game had more than 8 rebounds for either team. So Edey's size was felt on the glass. And for a Grizzlies team that desperately needs help rebounding, Memphis won the rebounding matchup by 11. The Grizzlies out-rebounded the Warriors 50-39. Zach Edey is the biggest reason for that. That's partially defense. 10 defensive rebounds for Edey, a double-double just based off of defensive rebounds alone. He also had 7 offensive boards, which meant more generated offensive possessions for Memphis. So you can't, on one hand, complain about the Grizzlies struggling on the glass and then look and say, I wish he wasn't on the floor. Why aren't they rebounding as well? It was noticeable that they weren't rebounding as well when Edey was gone. It's the offensive end. Zach Edey had 4 turnovers in this game. The only player that had more turnovers for Memphis was Joe Morant, and Joe Morant has a much higher usage rate than Zach Edey. Zach Edey struggles with the ball in his hands, putting it down below his head. The Warriors understood that. Kudos to Steve Kerr and the Golden State Warriors. They game planned for these Grizzlies well. We'll talk more about that with Jaren Jackson Jr. here in a minute. But they knew that Edey liked to bring the ball down, even though he has this massive size advantage, and they wrapped him up. They had numerous jump ball opportunities. They flustered him. They doubled him in the post, trying to make him a passer out of the block, and he had issues with that. And that threw Edey off his groove. Zach Edey was 4 for 11 from the floor. Didn't attempt a single three. And I'm not mad at him for not attempting a three because his three-point shooting was pretty clearly Taylor Jenkins trying to put a square peg into a round hole. But if you are going to be 7'4", 290 pounds, and if you are going to be somebody that they lob the ball up to because you're just so much bigger than everybody else, you have to be able to handle the ball in the air and in space and finish at the rim more effectively than Edey does at this moment. His offensive woes hurt the Grizzlies. You can talk about his defense all day. Yes, they're seeking him out. But again, Edey was a +6 in this game. So when Zach Edey was on the floor, the Grizzlies scored 6 more points than the Golden State Warriors. Now, how much of that is connected to Edey? That'll be a topic for conversation, not just over the next few days, but over the next few months and potentially years would be my guess. But Edey is being leaned on by Tuomas Isalo. There's no denying that. And Edey is providing opportunity for guys like Desmond Bane and Joe Morant to have success. Those two guys combined for 52 points on 39 shots. That's not an accident. Zach Edey directly helps them in terms of screen setting, creating space for them to operate and work in. We saw it with Steven Adams. And no, Zach Edey isn't as good as Steven Adams. And I think it's fair to say that he'll never be as good as Steven Adams. Now, he's a rookie and we need to give him time to develop. But I think we underappreciate Steven Adams is the larger point of what I'm trying to say. Zach Edey can be Zach Edey and help the Grizzlies win. Is he a starting big in the NBA? Jury's still out. He started in a play-in game, and he was the best plus-minus player for the Memphis Grizzlies in that contest. But he has to continue to improve defensively so he's not such a target. He can't just allow open three-point shooters. That was the biggest defensive frustration for me. When there was a switch and Gary Payton Jr. was open or Jimmy Butler was open, just letting those guys shoot without any closeout at all. I get that the game plan was built around letting those guys shoot. I understand. But you have to be in a position to at least slow closeout. You have to have some semblance of recovery. And if it's a game plan thing and they're not asking him to do that, that's a mistake. If it's because Edey can't physically do it, that's a problem in and of itself as well. So Edey was a +6. He had 17 rebounds. But again, the NBA crew for TNT was correct in pointing out the Warriors were seeking him out. And I think that's going to continue regardless of whether it's Dallas or Sacramento on Friday. Let me know in the comments. Hit me up on X at Joe Mullinax. How are you feeling about the Zach Edey experience at this time, heading into Friday's do or die 8th seed game? When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, we're going to close out this episode of the show talking about the third star for Memphis who did not shine brightly enough against the Warriors, and that's Jaren Jackson Jr. Stick around. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by SKIMS. When I found out that SKIMS was making underwear for men, I was intrigued, I'll be honest. I heard so much about their quality from friends and family, I had to give them a try. And let me tell you, SKIMS lives up to the hype. I've always had issues with underwear, fit, comfort, finding the right style for me. SKIMS changed all of that. Their men's line offers something for everyone, from boxer briefs to classic, all designed with the perfect balance of comfort and style. Me personally, I'm a boxer brief guy, and I work out pretty often. I don't like the synthetic feeling workout underwear, though, especially when I'm done at the gym. When I tried SKIMS stretch boxer briefs, it felt like I found the missing link. They give me all the movement that I need without feeling like I'm walking around in gym clothes the rest of the day. They never lose their shape. They never ride up. And since I've been wearing these, I feel like I've been getting into better shape as well. Big fan of SKIMS. Make sure you are shopping SKIMS Men's at skims.com/LockedOnNBA and SKIMS stores. Let them know that we sent you at Locked On Grizzlies after you place your order. Select podcast in the survey and select our show in the drop-down menu that comes down. Shout out to SKIMS. So Jaren Jackson Jr. was 6 of 15 against the Golden State Warriors. And of all of the things that I will give Golden State credit for, right? You can't give them credit for the officials. Obviously, Jimmy Butler is elite at drawing fouls, but there were some very questionable calls in that game and no calls for the Grizzlies. So I will acknowledge that Jimmy Butler and Steph Curry are great while also acknowledging that there were some unbalanced tendencies there in terms of the officials. The biggest place that the Warriors get credit for me is how they defended Jaren Jackson Jr. because Jaren 6 for 15 is fairly accurate. He was 4 for 9 from beyond the arc, and you might think, dear listener, dear viewer, oh, that's pretty good. Jaren shot over 40% from 3. Do the math on that. That means he was 2 for 6 from inside the three-point line. Jaren is 6'11", 245 pounds, and that size advantage that we mentioned with Zach Edey was very present with Jaren Jackson Jr. as well. The one guy on the Warriors who physically could contend with Jaren Jackson Jr., Jonathan Kuminga, was a did not play coach's decision. Quentin Post, Gary Payton II, Buddy Hield, Kevon Looney in this economy, in the year of our Lord 2025, got 10 minutes in the game, and Jonathan Kuminga did not. So what does that tell you? That tells you that the Warriors were able to, without the physical specimen, limit Jaren Jackson Jr. And how did they do it? They did it how a lot of other teams have done it, and Jaren hasn't been able to match it. They've taken away his left hand. They've double-teamed him early and not allowed him to get into his actions. They know that he's not going to look up and make passes. I've talked about the last 2 years here on Locked On Grizzlies. If you've been an everydayer that long, you know it to be true. Jaren has to be a better passer of the basketball because as dominant as he is physically, and he is dominant, teams are able to take that away if they effectively double team him. And he is predictable in his movements. He tries to get at his left hand. If I know that, NBA scouts know that. He has his head down when he drives and he focuses on the move. He doesn't focus on who's collapsing on him and who might be open off of that action. If I can see that, NBA teams can see that. And Golden State was able to execute that game plan and make Jaren uncomfortable throughout the contest. So the 4 made threes are great. That helps with spacing. That enables the offense to be more effective. His gravity matters. But he's 6'11", 245 pounds. And especially when he's playing alongside Santi Aldama, if he can't get to the rim, if he can't be that physical presence in the lane, especially if it's the Dallas Mavericks, I still think Memphis wins on Friday. But the Dallas Mavericks have a lot of bigs. Anthony Davis has dominated the Grizzlies in the past. You have Derek Lively still. You have PJ Washington still. Daniel Gafford is there in Dallas. Who's going to play the point for them? Who's going to run their offense? That's a good question. But Dallas is going to be bigger than Memphis, at least in terms of their depth, if it's the Mavericks. So what will Jaren do in those cases? And then if it's the Kings are versatile enough in terms of what they can throw at Jaren that they can maybe not do exactly what Golden State did. Draymond Green is a phenomenal defender. Golden State overall is a better defensive team than the Kings. But they have the capacity to throw bodies at Jaren and make him make decisions with the basketball that shouldn't involve him scoring. They should involve him creating for others, facilitating, moving the ball to wherever that help defense came from. But is Jaren capable of doing that? Is he willing to do that? It's a fair question, and it's one that I'm concerned about because that is what it's going to take for the Grizzlies to get out of the 8 seed game. A greater understanding, even if it's not passing for Jaren, if it 48 hours isn't enough time for him to fix that hole in his game. Just an acknowledgement of what teams are trying to do to him and getting rid of the ball sooner. Or going away from the left hand more and being more versatile in terms of how he gets to his spots. It's predictable at this point. And when you're predictable, teams that are able to execute and study and have the length and athleticism, maybe not the size, but they combine those other factors, they're going to be able to limit you. And Jaren doesn't have the handle that Joe Morant has. Jaren doesn't have the 3-level scoring that Desmond Bane does in terms of being able to combine it with a nice, tight, basketball savvy skill set off the dribble. Jaren creates well off the dribble for himself for a big, but he doesn't have that skill set to be able to match that when he has to get through multiple bodies. But instead of making the extra pass or just making the first pass to try to reset, he puts his head down and tries to power through, hoping for a foul or thinking that he can physically do it on his own. For the Memphis Grizzlies, regardless of how this season ends, maybe Memphis loses on Friday and the season's over. That's certainly possible. If Memphis wins on Friday, like I think they will, they'll play the Oklahoma City Thunder, and that series probably goes 5 games tops. Most folks will say OKC in 4, and I'll shrug and say, I get it. But regardless of how this season concludes, that has to be a return to focus for Jaren. Because they are going to, and by they I mean the NBA, take away what you are best at. And you have to be able to counter. If you don't have a counter that isn't predictable in and of itself, like the head down, forcing through, it's going to be a long run for you against teams that are actually good in the NBA. Against bad teams, you'll put up numbers. Good teams, not so much. And Jaren, especially these last several weeks, has really regressed in that way. Will that cost him all NBA? We'll have to see as the season plays out. Thank you so much for being with me on this episode of Locked On Grizzlies. A disappointing one in the wake of the Grizzlies-Warriors game, but Memphis still has another game to play. And on our next episode of the podcast, DeMichael Cole and I will break that down from all angles. We'll know who the opponent will be. We'll be able to take a closer look at how that play-in game went down. Hopefully we'll get some information on Joe Morant in terms of an update going into the Friday game. I'm sure it won't be a ton, but it'll be something to monitor in the days to come heading into Friday night's game in Memphis against either the Kings or the Mavericks. Make sure you're with us for the Thursday edition of Locked On Grizzlies. Make sure you're also checking out our wonderful Locked On NBA or Locked On Grizzlies newsletter. The play-in is heating up for Memphis. They are in the do or die situation on Friday night. Can they secure a playoff spot? Stay in the know with the Locked On Grizzlies podcast newsletter and get a chance to win one of these amazing prizes, a $2,500 Best Buy gift card to upgrade your sports cave setup, a $300 Game Time gift card, and a $200 Fanatics gift card. Those are all options just by subscribing to Locked On Grizzlies newsletter. Sign up between now and April 30th, 2025 to be entered. Our Grizzlies newsletter delivers real-time updates, expert analysis, and playoff insights tailored for you. Subscribe now for free to the Locked On Grizzlies podcast newsletter. Stay ahead as the season unfolds. Subscribe today. Click on the link in the description to enter. Make sure you're liking, commenting, rating, reviewing, subscribing wherever you get podcasts. Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, Google. It is all good. Make sure you're with us as the season grinds forth. It's not over yet. It's do or die on Friday, and we will have more to talk about with the second and final Grizzlies play-in game. It is going to be a big one, 8:30 Central there in Memphis, Tennessee on Friday night. Michael Cole of the Commercial Appeal and, of course, of Locked On Grizzlies will be back with us on Thursday to talk all about it. Thank you so much for being with me on today's episode. I am Joe Mullinax. Stay locked in, LockedOnDaily.com. Go subscribe to that newsletter and make sure you're an everydayer to the Locked On Grizzlies podcast. See ya.